Hello, hello. Welcome to Other World Connections. You are tuned into Revolution Radio, the #1 listener-supported internet radio station on planet Earth. Yes, and because it is a listener-supported station, please consider helping to support our efforts and airtime by visiting the station's donations section on our website, which is basically the homepage, revolution.radio. Thank you for your support. It's a station where information never sleeps and truth breaks the spell. You could become a patron. You could donate through DonorBox, an international alternative to PayPal. You can make a direct payment if you are a North American resident. You can donate through crypto if you just have a lot of that stuff lying around. Bitcoin, Ethereum, or Bitcoin Cash. You can send checks or money orders in US denominations. And feel free to join our new Discord server. The link is on the homepage of Revolution.radio. Yeah, so it's 4 minutes past 4 p.m. down here on a Friday, down here on the central plateau of the North Island of New Zealand. It's a sunny day. We've had some stinking hot summer days here. Around, if you are American, it would be temperatures around the mid-80s, which is, low 30s Celsius, mid-80s Fahrenheit, and in my book, that's pretty hot. And we live next to a river, so I've been taking my doggy down to the river, and we've been going for swims. It's the busiest I've ever seen the river here. It was like a day at the beach. Just too much information, personal information. But there you go. I interviewed a friend by the name of Francesco Sani, and he is Italian, and he was on the One Great Work Network. He's a truth teller, natural law teacher, does stuff online, does a lot of translating. My wife Julia does a lot of translating too, and that's how we all sort of bumped into each other on the internet. And anyway, my research on fairy tales is coming along rather nicely, and I want to reach out and interview and talk to people who are interested in maybe not fairy tales per se, but something that parallels fairy tale origins or meanings or symbology, in order to widen the view of what fairy tales are and what they mean. And I won't give away too much information, but what I will do is I will play the interview back to you, because it cleared a few things up for me, because I want to know about other people in 2025 that are out there researching things like human origins and ancient history and perhaps how to behave and what to do and what's what and what's real and what's not. I want to hear what they have to say, so it informs my worldview and helps me stay on track and refine that path that I'm taking on, trying to figure out exactly, really, what fairy tales are all about, just beyond the simple, fact that I believe that is a fact, is that they are essentially magic in a story, that when you read them to young children, it feeds a certain part of the soul that requires that nutrition in order to be able to deal with or manage or create dynamics later in life that are based around objective morality, the right thing to do, and to do with being able to respond with people doing the wrong thing to them and to others. deep mandala codes of morality. So I'm kind of waxing lyrical. I'm trying to reduce it down to something that sounds. It's not about sounding believable. It's just refining the verbiage around why I think fairy tales need to make a comeback. Yes. All right. And that's about that. So, let me close Windows. There we go. We're all up and running. Everything's fine. So now, I present to you my interview with Francesco Sani. Hello and welcome to Otherworld Connections. I'm your host, Gino, and I've got a very special guest today who I met in 2019, and he was kind enough to connect with me through, through various channels, based off my work, The Secret Kindergarten, which works on trying to find ways to connect and raise and educate young children to create a free world, a world without rulers and a world without slaves, and to just pick up on things that children need and share those with people based on my work as an early childhood educator and my work studying natural law and spirituality and so on and so forth. And then all these years later, I've ended up down a rabbit hole of fairy tales as a prime solution in 2025 and beyond to instill young children with, the spiritual sustenance that can help them to navigate life in a way that promotes freedom. And after all these years, I've circled all the way back and I thought of this very special guest today who has been doing some work and research on stuff connected in a way to fairy tales. And what I mean is, when I look at fairy tale stuff and start researching fairy tales, it does link up with antiquity and perhaps human origins and the spirituality and so on and so forth of a time well before now. And that made me think of my dear guest, Francesco Sani, who is with us today. So, Francesco, please tell us a bit about yourself and what you do.
Yes, sure. And hi, Gino. And first of all, thank you for having me on. And it's great to be here. Though I think it was a little bit later than 2019 when we met. Probably already the whole craziness of 2020 had already started, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's probably right.
But yeah, I've been putting out work and content since 2018, more or less. I did translations, documentaries at first. Then I translated much of the work of Mark Passio into Italian, with Italian subtitles. And I've been trying to spread vital information for our freedom and our rights. So that's basically. I also started a podcast of my own, and so I've been translating myself also back into Italian since most of the episodes are actually in English. And that's been that's what I've been doing so far. So thanks again for having invited me here.
You're welcome. It's good to have you on. And so, I've been going down this rabbit hole of, researching fairy tales and in particular looking at the symbols inside the fairy tales the sequence of the symbols, and wondering how, how that really affects especially young children or families, and the family dynamic if we have them around, like if we read them. And that's sort of the research that I've been doing lately. And when I look into fairy tales, reading books about, sort of something a bit like deeper or exploration or research on fairy tales, I often end up reading stuff about, questions about the origins of fairy tales. And some people say that really they go back to the origin of man, and so it made me start to question really, human origins, and something I haven't really looked into. I've recently started to scrape the surface, and there are obviously many, many theories out there. And I was just wondering, even though it's a very broad question, like what comes up with you in your mind if you think about human origins? What are your do you have some sort of views on human origins? It's a broad question.
Oh yeah, but I think it's very important, like all your other questions about origins in general, and I think it's very important to probably our most important endeavor to go back into origins, and because we need to go back to, they bring us back to source, so to speak, to the thing we've been to the thing we've strayed from, so we sort of to the things that we turned our back on. And I'd say the main thing is what's really important, like the truth. I think that's the main thing that we strayed from as a species. But yeah, I'd say fairy tales are important because they contain some of that knowledge that was they were basically an attempt to preserve knowledge. There are also others, but definitely the symbolism or the allegories in fairy tales, some obviously have a moral value, which I think that's what you're covering a lot on your show. But they also preserve very important knowledge and symbolism that in order for it to be carried out into the future, it's sort of as a countermeasure, if you will, for such knowledge to in case it got, let's say, lost or forgotten or threatened or something along those lines. So it's a mean to preserve it and carry it into the future, for hopefully the people who will still have eyes to see that and decode that. So I think that's probably the most important function of them, and so yes.
Yeah, I've always, when I've been looking at into fairy tales, to sort of at the symbolism and stuff, I've always thought of it a bit like, it's reminded me of tarot, like as if it was a tarot story. Instead of just one card, it's actually a sequence of symbols that may tell a story on different levels. And another thing I found interesting about fairy tales is I might attempt to sort of decode it, and then with an understanding of like the difference between right and wrong and sort of what natural law is and that sort of thing, that kind of can be a guide, right? And
yeah, it's definitely. Oh yeah, sorry.
No, just and then I'll come up with something that really feels like it fits, like it feels like it works, like there are different symbols in the story that kind of associate with one another. And then I might look at someone else's work and they'll decode it and it'll be on a different level and that will still work too. Not to say that it's like fully subjective, but I just think I'm fascinated by how deep the stories can actually run. In the way like a tarot reading. Someone could read it at face value, or there'd be some more deeper messaging going on and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, the tarot is a great example of a way to preserve, sometimes even in a more complex form, to preserve past knowledge, so and carry it into the future. So you're right, and but fairy tales, are in that way can be similar. And I know you wanted to cover. I mean, I could give you an example of or I don't know if I'm going too far ahead, but there were some.
Oh, go for
some
it.
examples you had of fairy tales, but
yeah, go for it.
Yeah, no, I was thinking about that you wanted to ask me about the Snow White fairy tale, and that's quite important because it's related to the seven. It was a way to preserve the knowledge of the seven, with the dwarfs, etc. And that's a very important subject, because we go way back in time with that one. And so the seven basically refers to it can refer to what many people have probably heard this term, the Elohim. The Elohim means gods, plural, and not God singular, as we often hear it translated as God, but it's actually gods. But it's referred to the planets that were visible in ancient times, that were visible to the naked eye, plus the sun and the moon. So, however, the most important thing is it's the constellation of it's the circumpolar constellations, and their succession was sort of the timekeeping of in ancient times, originally. So like the ancients, especially most likely the ancient Egyptians, were at their origins were keeping time using the succession of the pole stars, basically. So that's why they venerated. I mean, in the northern hemisphere, they obviously had the North Star, which is a fixed point, so it was considered suitable for storing this sort of knowledge, because it was fixed and it was basically unmutable and most high. And obviously they noticed that periodically there were the succession of the various pole stars. So that was, there was the whole cycle of succession of the pole stars. I mean, one pole star will be replaced by another in that position, and that was the constellation of the Little Bear, which is comprised by 7 stars. So I mean, without going too deep into it, even though we already kind of are, but so basically that's the importance of the 7, actually. So
Funnily enough, that was question number 7 of my question sheet.
oh, so yeah,
Oh, that's crazy. Hey,
yeah, I went quite far ahead because
no, that's cool. So you said the pole star. Is that correct?
yes.
So we're talking the North Pole?
Yes. The North Pole eventually became the North Pole, even though apparently they started venerating it in the south, the one in the southern hemisphere. So, however, I think it didn't have the same characteristics as the northern pole star. So when they moved into the north of the Nile Valley, they had a better way to recognize the direction, the orientation. So
Yeah. So could we say, like,
but it was a shift from venerating it in the southern hemisphere into the northern hemisphere. So
right?
and that has to do with it's a very big topic.
Yeah.
It's a huge topic, but of crucial importance, and that has to do with with cycles, and obviously cycles were important for man's survival. They had to do with agriculture.
Yes.
And so yeah, basically it's as I said, it's a kind of a huge topic. So.
And it was also done in the southern hemisphere, maybe obviously slightly different, but using stars, like say in the Pacific, for navigation from island to island and stuff like that. That's what I guess we kind of learned at school.
The brightness. The fact is that the brightness of the star and its position varies depending on which star is at the pole or nearest to indicating the pole. So
yes,
in the southern hemisphere, there was and there is like it's let's say it's a little bit more. It's not as bright, and it's a little bit more like the northern star is obviously more like it's obviously brighter, and it can indicate the direction in more of a precise way rather than the southern pole stars or circumpolar constellations.
So like to kind of like really boil it down, could we say like we in antiquity we developed developed a connection with the stars and planets, but more so we sort of developed a spiritual or a soul kind of connection with the goings on of the stars and the planets. Something like that.
Yeah. We obviously needed to store that knowledge, and it's something that today it's difficult to comprehend because we are a different.
Right.
We reason in a very different way.
Yeah.
And we are more, way more literal, and
yes.
And there's been a sort of a schism in science between. Let's say the seen and the unseen. So the empirical, the more empirical, and the unseen laws of nature.
Oh, right. I understand. I see
So
where
that was,
you go.
I mean, their science back then was based on, I mean, if you will, it was based on those observations. The observations of cycles and how they related to, I mean, also to nature, obviously, because those were crucial, as I said, for their survival. I mean, agriculture. I mean, the main goal was, one of the main goals was preserving this knowledge of cycles related to their agricultural developments, because they knew that agriculture gave them the possibility for growth and evolution, because you weren't anymore in more sort of in a survival modality. You were, you could actually stop and think and contemplate more. So that was that's what constituted the possibility to mentally evolve in a more in more stable conditions, which were made possible by the development of agricultural science.
Do you think that there's some parts of the way we used to live with this knowledge that we're missing, that would be is what makes it important looking into this? Like, in terms of we're missing some ingredients to freedom today,
Yes.
perhaps.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Yes.
Right, I'm with
and
you
I'd
now.
say the main thing is it's the care, and in particular the care for what really matters, which was truth. I mentioned this in the beginning, but and I know this is debated historically, and I mean we don't even get to this point probably in official history. But my understanding is that they really had care for truth, and they knew that they couldn't how do you say? Well, the term escapes me now in English, but they basically knew that they couldn't have the luxury to they couldn't afford to have dogmas. They knew the dangers of having dogmas, because they knew that could jeopardize their their life and their civilization ultimately. And today it's quite the contrary, actually, because truth it's very low on the scale of things that people care about. And many people say it doesn't even exist. Actually, it doesn't even exist objectively. So, and with the ancient mentality or mindset, they knew that truth was key for their survival. Nowadays, you sort of have to renounce the truth in order to survive. However, the thing is that we won't survive in the long term. We'll go in against truth, and that's what we're doing today. So I think the thing that we need to recuperate is definitely the care and deep understanding of why truth is important, and it's all that matters, actually.
Well, this is what got me so interested, is that my research on fairy tales and stuff made me start to understand that in antiquity, I'm not, obviously I'm not there yet with the ages, like whether it was the Bronze or the Iron Age for what I've been
Well,
looking at.
that's super debated and
Okay.
super controversial,
Okay.
and people are arguing and fighting over it. So
Well,
I think the most important thing, rather than fighting over the ages or the time periods, is realize what the culture was about,
yeah,
what and the various cultures were about in time.
that's what's intriguing to me. Yeah, that's such a good point. The thing that intrigues me is that, if some of these tales were written or, created back then, it also shows how inclusive they were of all people, like obviously including children as well. Because fairy tales are great for young kids, and obviously if they created these stories, they made them with them in mind. So there was already a respect for young children, which we don't really have today in that regard. And so there's like that parallel there that got me interested in this topic, and I learned.
Not only their own, but the future generations. Actually, I think that's
Yes.
the most important part. I know many cultures had that. The Native Americans with the 7 generations principle, and so that it was for progeny and posterity.
Yes.
That's why they try to keep to keep this knowledge preserved. And today, as I said, we don't have the same mindset. We kind of struggle to wrap our mind around the way they were preserving these things. But for example, if you say to people they preserve knowledge in the stars, and they'll be like, and what the hell does that mean?
Yeah.
But they had that, because that was one of the safest places, because it couldn't be destroyed, basically. It couldn't get lost. So, and it was literally the most high that they could see. So, and then they used monuments, and then carried out into, as we said, allegory and symbol, and some of that ended up in fairy tales. So
yeah, it shows. Yeah, I guess just where I'm coming from is like my process has been reverse engineering it, in the sense that if you really care, right, you care about those around you, as like a foundation to being able to care about. You have to have love in your heart and care to consider, like, what about the future generations? What about this? What about that? And obviously, what is clear is, well, what you're saying, right? That they were operating at a higher level in terms of like care for one another and care for humanity. And yeah, so that's why.
truth itself,
look into
man.
it.
It's
Yeah,
just we often talk about service to there's service to truth. That comes before service to self and service to others also. So I think that's the again the greatness, if you will, of those types of civilizations. They understood the level of importance of things, and they put the truth first. They regarded it as most high.
So then, could we just leave it at that, in the sense that, like, we can understand now that we should serve truth, and then I'm sort of playing devil's advocate here, right? We could just serve truth, and then, oh well, the past was the past, and it's all a bit of a mystery. But let's just serve truth today, and that's the best we can do. I won't bother reading, Churchwood or, I won't get into that. Like, I don't know. Is there?
No, I think it's we're not really going anywhere. We're not really going much of anywhere if we have that, if we leave it be, it's sort of it's a study that will need to be done sooner rather than later, and it's complex. As I said, it's controversial. But I think it's definitely an endeavor that we will have to tackle one way or another. Because we have no we have no future if we don't know, or if we don't know our past in that sense, and what advanced civilizations that went way before us, and even way before probably what's considered the recognized mainstream history. So yeah, I think that's key, because without that we can't really understand the importance of what they, their discoveries were in, and so yeah, that's what I think.
So that makes me think of the ancestral cult, in the sense that we don't really venerate our ancestors as we used to. And the ancestral cult, like veneration of ancestors, is one thing that pretty much all of humanity has had in common. I don't know, what's the point of my question. Like, in a way, like, looking at our origins is kind of venerating our ancestors, in a sense. Anyway, do you have sort of an opinion on where I'm going with that? Like, is this sort of like?
Yeah, I think I understand where you're going, and I think we don't. One of the things we don't recognize anymore is the importance to keep a link to the to our past, literally. So that's probably what the veneration of ancestry was about. So yeah, I think that's another important element.
Yeah, I'd like to think that sort of like looking into this stuff is kind of reviving that respect for where we came from, which,
yes,
I guess I'm just sort of using synonyms, really. But yeah, like, I've just been interested. I land at the ancestral cult, or the topic of the ancestral cult, sometimes when I look into these things. Basically, I don't know if you know Varg Vikernes. I don't know if I was saying his last name correct, but he was in a black metal band in the 90s called, Burzum. I think he's still an artist, Burzum, but he was involved in that Norwegian sort of gang that were going around burning down churches and stuff. I'm kind of butchering the what actually went on with all of that, but the black metal scene in Norway in the 90s, or in Scandinavia. Anyway, he does some work on fairy tale symbolism. So I just found out about him through looking for fairy tales, but he connects a lot of these old stories to obviously antiquity, but
does he still burn churches?
No, but I guess what I'm saying is, I think he would if he could. Yeah. But I guess where he's coming from is Indo-Europe was doing fine until Christianity came along and kind of hijacked the astrotheology and incorporated it into the Abrahamic religions. That's where he was coming from. But just going back to the fairy tales is he observes and looks into the ancestral cult, and he finds connections in the symbols in the fairy tales to teachings of the ancestral cult being really just a veneration of our life as reincarnation, that we are our ancestors, we are connected to our ancestors, we came from antiquity, and just a sort of respect for where we came from, and also as kind of like a unifier of humanity, that everybody used to do that at some point. I think except for, well, this is sort of above my pay grade at the moment, but like except for maybe some regions of, I think except for sub-Saharan Africa, but generally, everyone venerated their ancestors. So anyway, I'm just saying that's just where I sort of brought up the ancestral cult thing.
Yeah, but well, it is true that Christianity absorbed many of the, so-called, what they sort of negatively called, pagan, rites and things of that sort. They reabsorbed them, so I sort of incorporated them into their religion if they couldn't completely eradicate them. Yeah. However, one thing about, because I know religion is sort of a hot topic, but it's not good to. Many people would like to do away with it, but it's not good to do away with it. And I think especially nowadays, like especially the Christian religion, because I think it's the as you said before, if you reverse engineer it, I think it's one way. It's one very important link to the origins of religion, and so to our origins. So we gotta be careful of like all this sort of Bible burning and religion, eradicating religion sort of thing. That many people have, including anarchists, or at least the more the majority of like anarchists have about destroying, eliminating religions.
Yes.
And I think that would be a big mistake, because then we lose our link to decoding the the past and going back. I like what you said about reverse engineering, because it's the term I use myself to sort of describe the importance of religions, especially the monotheistic religions, and maybe like Christianity, most of all, probably the Christian religion. I mean, they have obviously they're dogmatic, so we need to find our way around the dogmas and get to the to the truth they contain. Obviously, there are also moral truths, but also the way we can go back to their origins. I actually did a whole show on origins of religions with Douglas Martin. That's on that's on my on my channels. I think it was pretty interesting, even though, as you probably can guess, it was quite it was a complex topic. So, but
it sounds. Yeah, I mean, it's heavy. Sounds heavy. I'll put in the link.
Yeah.
I'll put the link in the notes below when I publish this. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that could be interesting to to sort of start to understand the point, some of the points that we are discussing even on this show.
Yeah, I guess there's definitely ways to be to trip up on finding out what things are really about. I went to, well, many years ago, Julia and I we stopped in San Francisco, and we went into, I don't know if it was an anarchist shop, but it was kind of like a punk rock sort of store with this sort of community ethos, and there were t-shirts and records and books, a lot of anarchist books. I think in hindsight a lot of it was anarchy registered trademark. So yeah, and we found this we found this pamphlet. It was just a booklet, and it was about astro theology, or the origins of the Abrahamic religions, and it wasn't very much. I tried to find it, I couldn't find it, but it was just it's just something that I still remember. Anyway, it was just I don't think there was anything wrong in it. It was just it's funny how esoterica, it goes sort of so really deep. So the exoteric, the surface is really, really thin, and then you scratch under, and that next surface is also really, really thin. In the sense that you could read that pamphlet as a supporting argument for atheism. That, hey, this is just some bullshit that was taken from some other bullshit. The end, therefore, there is no God. There is no spirit. There is only LGBT. But yeah, so I can see how it's not co-opted, but when I read that, it was it was sustaining. I felt like I got a lot out of it, right? And at the time, it did sort of reinforce this idea of, well, atheism to me at that time. Yeah. So that was just a little comment I wanted to throw
Yeah,
in
that
there.
probably something that was, I guess, probably could be used to support an atheistic worldview.
Yeah, like you said,
which is obviously very very dangerous worldview, because we know where that leads to materialism and moral relativism, and all the horrors that come with that, the tyranny that comes with that, and that we have proof now in our current situation. But I mean, astrotheology is actually another quite important and big subject, and there are various aspects to it. And I'd say, first of all, that it's basically the correlation between religious veneration and the celestial bodies and their movements, and I think it's most known fundamentally for the the path of the sun through the various houses of and constellations of the zodiac. Yeah, the houses of the zodiac. So and that's important to understand. It also regards cycles and and the alternation of the seasons. Again, agriculture.
Yep.
Has to do with agriculture again, and but it comes from that's a solar aspect. So we started talking about the stellar, the stellar culture the stellar cult. They had the the users, they basically venerated into the stars, and they used that to as a time as their uh, timekeeping method to measure epochs and and those sort of things. And then apparently the evolution was stellar lunar, because then they were based on lunar cycles, and on the moon. And then we got to the solar period, which apparently is the one that we are in today, sort of a later advanced solar phase, which was the veneration of the sun, like using the sun to determine the various the cycles of time. So, and while that constituted an evolution of timekeeping, obviously, because I mean, keeping stellar, if we talk about stellar time or epochs, based on that, we are looking at a very wide and lengthy periods of time that go over thousands of years. So obviously, what as they evolved, they try to to put a more precise point on timekeeping. So we went with with solar cycles, which means the day, the solar year, etc. So we have a more precise and observable and shorter periods of time that we have to deal with. So, however, but I'd say again, don't want to go too far ahead again, but I mean, the problem with that was that the past knowledge, much of that past knowledge was lost. So a connection to to their purer forms was lost, and that if I if you will, long story short, if you will, that led to losing basically the material, more materialistic worldview, and and more worship of man as as the basically as a divinity, and man's law, and all that. So that led to trouble, let's say, to put it simply put. Yeah.
What's your
However, yeah, talking about astrotheology and the zodiac, that's the observation of the movements of celestial bodies related to religious veneration, and so that's obviously linked with Christianity, because obviously it's the you have the whole allegory of like
allegories indeed? Yes. So you're tuned into Other World Connections here on Revolution Radio, Studio A. We're just coming up to the ad break. I've just been playing an interview I did with Francesco Sani. Yes. So anyway, thanks for tuning in. Stick around. We'll see you on the other side of the ad break. Hello, welcome back to Otherworld Connections. I'm your host Gino, and I am transmitting from a small town near Lake Taupo in New Zealand on the North Island, and it's a sunny day here, warm, sunny. 3 minutes past 5 p.m. on a Friday. Where you are, it's possibly 3 minutes past 11 p.m. Eastern Time on a Thursday. Yeah. This is Revolution Radio, the #1 listener-supported radio station on planet Earth. So yeah, please consider helping to support our efforts and their airtime by visiting the station's donation section on our website, revolution.radio. Plenty of ways to donate if you so wish, and you can also advertise on the homepage for the paltry sum of $25 US a month. And here on Otherworld Connections, I've just been playing back an interview I did with a Francesco Sani. Oh man, I have to get his website. Yeah, I will fix that up. Yes, so interviewing Francesco Sani about essentially human origins. He talks about the stellar cult. That's his topic of interest at the moment, the rabbit hole he's been going down. And yeah, I'm trying to just find some, well, parallels in the sense that, you know, I think fairy tales go back all the way back to when everybody can go all the way back to. And it seems to be people are poking around the stellar cult. We've come across the bear cult here on Otherworld Connections, and how they revered the initiation of the person to 7 years old, and that was the most important initiation ritual. I believe it is too. And again, that's something we've covered here, child development on Otherworld Connections, and obviously the Secret Kindergarten. You can check out my Secret Kindergarten show for kids on Saturdays Eastern Time, 2 p.m. To 3 p.m. right here on Revolution Radio. Yeah, it's all about the kids. It's all about what we got to do for the kids and with the kids to create that future that we obviously know that the children are. And to find out, people are looking back. And I'm looking back in respect of fairy tales. I'm trying to find out precisely, or trying to be able to explain precisely, why fairy tales are muy importante. Okay. So let's finish off this interview.
You know, Jesus, the Son of God, and died on the cross and then resurrected. And it's basically the path of the Son. I know many people try to debunk this, but it's kind of, if you ask me, and I know you want to ask me what I think on this show, and if you ask me, it's pretty self-evident that that's what it represents.
Yes. Yeah. And also people tend to react to that in like say someone says that, doesn't necessarily mean that they're a, Bible bashing Christian, right? Doesn't necessarily mean that. But you're right, I think it is self-evident. But that doesn't mean that I pitch my flag on Abrahamic Christianity and everyone else should be killed. Which seemed to be
that doesn't negate obviously the spirituality and or the Christian or the teachings of attributed to Jesus in the New Testament. So that doesn't negate all that.
And that's one of the things that I really respect about this topic and this pursuit, is that you're kind of forced to open your mind. You have to have an open mind going in, and because you're going to trip yourself up if you stay in ego and take everything so hyper. Like there is like crossover and there is sort of blending and all that sort of thing. And it's good for the mind to open that up a little bit and not be so judgmental of every little factoid that comes up. So that's one of the things I
Oh yeah,
noticed about.
there's a lot of crossover
Yeah,
and overlapping, obviously, about all this, in all these myths,
yeah,
from, and in the mythos through the different phases. So
I think some
it's
people.
definitely, it can be, it can be a. I mean, it is quite complex.
Yeah, I mean, some
Is
people just
a
couldn't do it.
complex
Like,
topic.
couldn't consider it. Their brain would explode because they're so tribal in what they believe. They can't. They
Yeah,
can't
there are a
break
lot
out of
of
it.
dialectics, and religion versus,
Mm.
like, I mean, dogmatic religion versus uh,
Yes.
the, the other dogmatic religion, which is the atheist worldview, or the, the, or man's law, the man's law paradigm, I guess.
Yeah. One question I had when you're talking about astrotheology is like, so what are your thoughts on? Well, just generally, just like, there's obviously like there is something dogmatic about people, right? Humans are. There's something dogmatic about us, but more than that, like if we put that to the side and just say there's something spiritual, like where do we sort of project that aspect of ourselves, in the sense that, like, I guess when you're talking about astrotheology, I was just thinking of like astrology, just straight up astrology. Like, what are your thoughts on astrology? Like, is astrology kind of like our best effort at trying to, venerate the stars and the moon and the sun? Is there, or is it just all a complete, like, or is there some middle ground there? Do you have any thoughts on, just astrology, like 2025, you know,
I
zodiac
think
and
it's one of those things that that have been good to bring forward bring into the future, bring this knowledge into the future. Kind of like the tarot. So they had aspects, because even if they had aspects of the, how can you say, like, charlatanery, if if like charlatans have been use them to predict your future, or exactly the way it's gonna go to you, you know and to however, it still served the purpose to preserve to preserve knowledge. So, like, even people, even if it was used in a wrong way by charlatans, they still actually served some sort of purpose. So that's what I think.
I understand. Like, there's some truth inside, and retaining truth is important because it's the thing that leads us to really more truth, or triggers us to, it feeds that part of ourselves, and that allows that part
Yeah,
of it
it
not
preserves it.
acknowledge.
It doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't let it be completely lost.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I like to just, as just a simple practice, is just observe the moon. Just keep an eye on, like it's a full moon now, and there's something about that is like it scratches an itch, some dogmatic itch in me, and yeah, like it's like some kind of, in my mind, it's some kind of like spiritual nourishment, just like following the moon. And I'm just talking like, oh right, it's a full moon at the moment. Just every other day, just check where we're at with the moon, and obviously looking at the moon. and then reading a bit about like how that might affect people. I think there's something in it that's nourishing and also kind of harmless, right? Not trying to sell without trying to sell anything to anybody or anything like that. On that, yeah, like is there like so we're doing this interview here. Is there like a question that like when you do these interviews you kind of wish people would ask you? Like is there something like even off topic, just anything? Like is there something you want people to hear or something you want me to know? Is there something you wish you could just talk about for a moment? Well, now's your chance.
Well, I mean, we covered or attempted to cover some big topics there. So I would right at the moment really there's kind of nothing comes to mind as far as another unrelated question.
Well, that's good. That's good.
To be honest, because no, maybe I wanted to add something about the astrology thing that obviously can help you understand, the zodiac and the symbolism thereof. So you basically, I'm as far as understanding, the path of the sun, which represents also the hero's journey. So that's another interesting aspect of it, and that's what many religions sort of, or many traditions and myths sort of represent. So that's an important thing to keep in mind. And
yeah, so that's I get it. Where I feel like that's good in the sense that this conversation was like really on track. I feel like I'm on track figuring out this whole fairy tale conundrum. Do you have like a closing statement like for today?
Well, I guess that's I wanted to state again that these are very crucial topics, and obviously we need we have the understanding of natural law and objective morality. Obviously, it's going to be our guiding light when we when we're gonna tackle this when we're gonna go into this area, the area of origins and ancient civilizations, and what they were, sort of what their purpose was, and what they were trying to to do for for them to evolve their civilization, and to and what they were doing for posterity also, because obviously, as you said, and as you said before also, they had posterity in mind. Definitely they had the care for people who would come after them, and they didn't have they had no idea what was going to be like. However, they still did try to communicate them, the more what they discovered were the most important things. So
Francesco, Thank you so much for sharing your views on this. Things are a lot clearer for me now. I do appreciate that. I really do. And I'm going to keep going with my my fairy tale decoding and that sort of thing. And I just hope that more people start to look into this. I'm inspired too. So I appreciate it. And if you'd like to, just maybe share links of your work. Where can we check out more of your work?
Well, okay, but yeah, first of all, thank you for having me, and yeah, it was great to be here, and I also wanted to add another thing that I'm obviously let's say more of I'm still kind of a student of these sort of things, so my understanding needs to, uh, I want to say that I'm not so much a teacher of these things, but I'm more on the student side of it. So it's gonna be a long process, and it's an ongoing process. So
Yeah.
um, I wanted to say that, and yeah, I've got a website that's called Monarchia Interiore, .com or .wordpress.com. So that's what that's where I have my material, uh, which is at this point most of it is in English, so I think people would be able to understand it. But I think that's it basically. That's pretty much it for me. So
Awesome, and I'll post those links down in the notes when I publish this. And yeah, man, awesome. And we'll have to do this again soon. When I've got more questions. Thanks so much.
all right, yeah. If I can, if I'm able to help, I'd be glad to do it. So
Awesome.
thank you.
All right. Yeah, that was Francesco Sani, and I posted the link to his website on the YouTube chat and also in the Discord chat room. Yeah, so his website is in Italian. There are pretty sure there are links to videos. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly go to Odyssey. Yeah, I'm going to go to his homepage on Odyssey, and there will be some videos in English. I'll paste that there. That's done. And then I will paste it into YouTube. So yeah, if you happen to know anyone that speaks Italian, then yep, that's the way to go. That's the site to go to. Yeah, so Francesco going down, deep down, dive into our ancient past and looking at the Stellar cult. What are your thoughts on that? My thought is that Francesco believes that there is something that we're missing from all the way back when, inside the symbols and stuff that we look at, perhaps in the tarot, perhaps in numerology, perhaps in other pursuits. Going back to find some golden eggs of truth that we have missed. So I think that that's what I'm gathering, that the path of the symbolist, the person looking for symbols and meanings and decoding them, I think they see it as, well, the words that they use are very important and crucial. Yeah, so I'm not 100% on where I sit with that, but it's good for me to know that that's where, say, Francesco is coming from, and perhaps other people in the circles that he runs with. Yeah, I think whatever is true can be applied to 2025. And I think the real part of the problem is just people not caring about the truth, not caring about right versus wrong and behaving in the right way and still believing in government. Yeah. But I do think that fairy tales are are a tool to get out of that. And that's why we need to read them. So yeah, it was a pretty tough talk, pretty tough conversation. Yeah, I don't know. What do you think? Let me know. I'm not very comfortable doing interviews, to be honest. But yeah, I'm going to have a look now. We're going to go to We are going to go to The Way of the Dream, Marie-Louise von Franz, a Jungian documentary on dreams and the inner world. That's what we are doing now. I'm going to go back to that. I'll put my face there. That's all set up. Yeah, let's keep going with this. With sort of about half an hour. 32 minutes left to go. So let's do that.
We just kept on falling. I kept on falling. I don't know about everybody else, but I kept on falling. And that's all.
Okay, I'll tell you the dream. I moved into a house in Montreal, and it had a white staircase. 3 nights in a row, I fell down that staircase screaming, and it never had an end. It was terrible.
I had a dream that I fell off a cliff, and I woke up, I was on the floor. That's about it on dreams.
Tell us a good nightmare.
Yeah, riding on a motorcycle down cobbled streets and then just having no street left and falling. That's awful. But I never hit the ground, which is good. I'm supposed to die.
Dr. von Franz, we've all experienced falling in dreams. What's its symbolic meaning? Is it true we're dead if we hit the ground?
I have experienced falling and not being dead, and being caught up or waking up before I hit the floor or so on. I don't think that's general.
So when you hit the floor, you're not necessarily dead.
No. It simply means a shock collision with reality. If you are too high up, if you have dreams of falling, it always means that you are somewhere too high up. Either you have a too good opinion of yourself, you are megalomaniac, or you have romantic, unreal ideas, or you are living in a make-believe world, or you are living in a theory instead of... You are somewhere missing the contact with reality. And then you have a sudden fall. And sudden fall dreams generally occur together with outer deep disappointment. When one is suddenly kind of faced with reality, naked reality as it is, and that can be a deadly shock to the ego. One can be, so to speak, be blotted out by it for a while, and that will be the death by hitting the floor. The ego is out, has nothing to say anymore.
Now I'd like to turn to one of the major symbols of our culture, the star. What is it that mankind has projected onto the star to make it symbolic?
The realm of the stars was always looked at to be the realm of the eternal divine beings, and therefore in many parts of the world there is the folklore tradition that when you see a shooting star shoot down, that is the moment the soul comes to earth and the child is born. And at the same time, as well in China as in, for instance, in the old Roman Empire, when a remarkable personality died, the astrologers went and looked at the sky for a new star, because they thought that the dying soul would return and become a star in the sky. Or for instance, in the Egyptian death ritual, the prayer goes, "Let me become one of the unsetting star which circles around the North Pole." That is the goal of the dead person, to become one of the never-setting stars. So the star has to do with uniqueness, with the uniqueness and the eternity of the uniqueness of a personality. That has been projected into a star. And for instance, the immortal spiritual part of the psyche was represented in Egypt by the Ba, the so-called Ba, which was either drawn as a bird or as a star, and meant that part of the personality which outlasts death and then accompanies after death the sun god over the sky as a never-setting star.
This is one of the rare dreams in which I heard an authoritative male voice telling me unquestionably what it wanted me to do. I could not understand it. And a voice said to me, "This is your lodestar."
Will you tell us about the Star of Bethlehem?
That fits exactly into that context, namely that when a remarkable, outstanding personality is born, a new star appears bright star appears in the sky, and that's how the Magi, the three kings, interpreted it at once. When they saw the Star of Bethlehem, they knew now some outstanding, important personality is born on earth. And that's why they went to see the child. That fitted the general viewpoint of the time. Everybody would have concluded that at that time. A new star, that means somewhere somebody, an emperor or a great ruler or a personality who changes the whole fate of mankind, has come to earth.
I'd like you to interpret a dream now in which the star is the central image. It's the most ancient dream in the history of mankind, the dream of Gilgamesh, king of the ancient walled city of Uruk. Gilgamesh was a powerful leader, and they felt his dream was important enough to be inscribed in stone. Here's the dream. In the middle of the night, I walked proudly up and down among my people. There were stars in the sky. Suddenly, one of the stars of the sky god Anu fell upon me. I tried to lift it, but it was too heavy for me. All Uruk assembled around this star, and the people kissed its feet. Can such an ancient dream have meaning for us today?
This dream is about 4,600 years old, and still we can find modern parallels. The language of the unconscious has changed much less than the language of human consciousness has. And so if we interpret this dream from a modern standpoint, we could say that up till the moment where the star fell upon Gilgamesh, he fulfilled a collective role of the king. He was the hero and the king, and that he probably was a very ambitious man. He made a big career. He's the typical man who follows up ambitiously and successfully a collective pattern. Nowadays he would be a great politician or a movie star or somebody, a man who has followed up certain collective alleys and reached a goal. Such a person, looked at from within, is generally very not individual. He's fulfilling a collective role and fulfilling a role of power, reacting in a very collective way. The star, on the contrary, represents, as we saw before, the uniqueness, because every soul has one star in heaven. And we can say that up till now Gilgamesh, with all his collective power achievements, has not yet done anything unique. On the contrary, he has only filled out a typical pattern of the hero king. And now, probably presumably about in the middle of life, because that's when the most frequently it occurs. Something changes while he's walking around the people, so to speak, proudly of his own power position, collective power position. From the sky falls a star on his back, and turns to be a very heavy load. That is the moment where the unique destiny befalls him, literally falls upon his back. That means from now on one's back one carries a load, and that means he has now, just as Christ had to carry his cross, he has now to carry like his cross the burden of having to become himself, to become the unique, chosen individual he was meant to be, and which he had avoided by being an ambitious collective man up till now. And that proves not to be a glorious call, but to be a heavy burden to him. Now, the star means also the immortal soul of man, the eternal. For instance, in Egypt, that part which survives after death freely in the Egyptian world beyond is the bar soul, which is drawn as a star. The star is the eternal kernel of the human psyche, and has always represented that, the unique, eternal man within us. And so he has now to follow his unique destiny instead of fulfilling a collective role. But the people kiss the star's feet. They prostrate themselves before the star, so that it means the real greatness is, there is probably Gilgamesh, up till the star fell upon him, also thought he was a great man. He was a king, he was a hero, he was the fortress of his people, and now he has to see not he is not much. What the people worship is that star stone, that greater thing in him. So that in that dream there is also a little teaching for Gilgamesh. Don't take all the honor people give you for yourself. Don't lap up the compliments they give you for yourself. It is that star upon you, and that is your heaviest load, your necessity to become a unique individual. That's what they worship in you, not you. And so from then on, Gilgamesh becomes the servant of his unique, heroic task, to the search for immortality.
Very few people follow their own star today. Why?
It is easier to admire a great personality and become a pupil or follower of a guru or a religious prophet or an admirer of a big official personality, a president of the states, or give your life for a general whom you admire. That is easier than to follow your own star, because to follow your own star means isolation, not knowing where to go, having to find out a completely new way for yourself, instead of just going on the trodden path everybody else runs along. And that's why there has always been a tendency in men to rather project the uniqueness and the greatness of their own inner self onto outer personalities and become the servants, devoted servants of outer personalities, admirers and servants and imitators.
What is the nature of the personality that receives that projection?
Generally, if somebody has by birth some outstanding qualities, intelligence or some other talents, and in time he or she attract the projection of the star, and people devote themselves to those gifted people and so on, and in that way then comes the great temptation to develop an inflation. An inflation means an overestimation of oneself. Instead of saying my talent isn't me and I my intelligence isn't me. I have been born with a good computer, and that's all there is to it. There is no merit. People identify with their gifts, and they get blown up. Inflation means to be blown up like a balloon. And that you see on a minor scale whenever people have a success, even if a lecturer has a success and so on, he afterwards displays arrogant mannerisms and or condescendent mannerism. You see that he or she has an inflation. And naturally people who have made history, like the Roman emperors, for instance, to take just a historical example, many of them suffered from what one calls the madness of Caesars.
Inflation, then, is having either too high or too low opinion of oneself. But is it possible to get an accurate evaluation of one's own self-esteem or one's self-worth?
Well, the difficulty is that nobody has by nature a very good estimation of his values. Nobody knows how much or how little he or she is. I mean, ask anybody now, honestly, are you a great person or are you a small person? How small, how great are you compared to others? They would have to admit that they have no idea. It is a subjective feeling. Either one has an inferiority feeling and one feels the last worm on earth, or one has a superiority complex and then one feels one is elected far above the average, one has to achieve something special, and most people switch between those two. In neurotic people it's extreme, and in normal people it's less extreme, but everybody has days where he feels lousy and below the weather and a nobody, and days where one feels on top of the world, so to speak. That is a natural swing back and forth. And one could call a normal personality where the estimation of oneself is approximately reasonable to compare to what one has achieved, who one is, how the surroundings see to one, and so on. But it's a very indefinite thing, really. Any lack of balance in this respect, when it goes either too far below the mark or too far above the mark, has an irritating effect on the surrounding. If one wants to know if one has an inflation, one has to only see if one gets on people's nerves. Then one is probably a bit overestimating oneself. Or underestimating oneself, because that's the same thing. If one has an inferiority complex, it's really ambition. One wants to be more than one is. One wants to be a great person and knows one isn't, and therefore one feels the last worm on earth. That is just a veiled inflation. Inferiority is a veiled inflation, and therefore also gets on people's nerves. When people sometimes come in and say, oh, well, I don't know, I can't do it. How do you think I can do this? I'm not capable, I'm so stupid, I can't think, and so on. Now, stop that nonsense. Get on with your job. They are really making a conceited dance in form of calling themselves incapable. So it has, again, this irritating effect. So the only measure one can have, because nobody knows who is important in the last view of life, before God, so to speak, who is important or is not important. Nobody knows.
I'd like to return to something we talked about earlier. You said that it's easier for an individual to follow in someone else's footsteps than to find their own way. What happens when a person projects their own star out onto somebody else? When they project the self out onto another person?
Let's first see the positive side. If the self is projected, one falls into a tremendous state of admiring the person onto whom one projects the self, a kind of incredible fascination and devotion to that person. And that can have the advantage of being capable of learning. If one projects the self, for instance, onto somebody who is really wise or superior, one can learn a lot. That is even the secret of many miraculous cures, that people project the self onto a healer personality, and in the incredible fascination and faith they have into that healer personality, from that faith they are cured from all sorts of psychological or psychosomatic illnesses. So then it serves as a vehicle of promoting the individual. Much more frequently, however, this fascination leads to infantile giving up oneself and being, so to speak, flat on one's belly before the other person, worshipping the great leader or the great spiritual guru or whatever the projection is, and losing oneself in an infantile way. And remaining infantile, such people are generally very fanatical in the admiration of that admired person, defending that person against the enemies and so on, and basking in the glory of their master or admired person through identification. And that saves these people from making an effort themselves. The great man or the great woman out there is going to do it all for me, and my task is to only applaud and admire the thing. I have to make no effort to become more intelligent or more wise or more independent myself. So it can just annihilate the personality and make them infantile instead of make them grow up and develop them. It naturally depends a bit from the person onto whom the projection of the self falls. If that person has an inflation and misuses it to breed admirers and followers, it has disastrous consequences. But I know also that there are in the Far East sometimes masters who know about the dangers of the infantile dependence and send those novices and pupils back to their own inner task and don't take the projection, so to speak.
The psychology of one individual can be reflected in an entire society. What happens then to the collective if the self is projected?
Well, then you have either monarchies or leader dictatorships. The kings of all countries, down even to the chief of a primitive tribe, are carriers of the symbol of the self. And you have all the advantages and disadvantages of a monarchical system. The advantages are that such a tribe or population has a unifying symbol of the self which holds them together. That is a projected symbol of the self, and because it's such a deeply rooted need in man to have such a symbol, living symbol of the self. Naturally, for Catholics, the Pope very often represents the symbol of the self as being more of a spiritual leadership than worldly leadership. But that's a split situation in the West. But because there is such a need, you have now, since monarchy has been mostly abolished, we have all the dictators, Napoleon, Hitler. We have always these leader figures which show that people want again or need to project the self onto some leader figure. And that, according to Jung, is an infantile gesture. It's because we want to remain children. We don't want to take the responsibility. Democracy is a very difficult task because it puts the responsibility on everybody, and most people don't want to take political responsibility. They don't want to wreck their brains, but they prefer to think the father state will do it all right. So one likes to project onto a leader. We have a group of leaders, and they are father figures, and they are the self, and they do it all right. Just mental and psychological laziness.
Laziness.
Laziness is, Jung once said, that's the greatest passion of mankind, even greater than power and sex and anything.
In our Western culture, our psyches and our DNA are carrying the symbolism of the Jewish and Christian faiths. In the next two films, we will be looking at the change, the shifting of the symbolism within the culture and in individuals. The foundations of our culture are based on the importance of dreams. In the Old Testament, for example, the priests and prophets, the leaders, believed in their dreams, honored them, and acted on them.
Today we ignore the importance of dreams. We rarely listen to what they're saying. In fact, we've even forgotten their language. Paradoxically, throughout our religious history, dreams played a central role in determining the fate of mankind. They were thought to be the voice of God. Dr. von Franz, let's look first at some biblical dreams. A dream which changed the history of the Jewish nation, the dream of Jacob's ladder. And Jacob dreamed that there was a ladder reaching from the earth up to heaven. And the angels of the Lord were ascending and descending on it. The Lord stood above the ladder and said, "The land on which you lie I will give to you and your descendants. And by your descendants shall all the families of the earth bless themselves. Behold, I am with you and will keep you wherever you go." Quite a prediction, eh?
Jacob's dream has been one of the examples which have always been cited by medieval and later authors to justify the taking seriously of dream, and there are some more in the Bible which were always taken in the Western civilization as proof that God sends dream and that dreams have an important, even they speak of God-sent dreams. They are communications with God. Now Jacob goes to a certain place near Haran, and there, because the sun set, he lies down and puts a stone as a pillow under his head. And that certain place is mentioned again at the end of the text, that Jacob said, "This is truly the house of God," and so on. This is one of the oldest beliefs of mankind, that in the landscapes there are certain places where one has either communication with the upper deities or with the lower deities. For instance, a dark chasm or a hole in the ground is generally by every primitive tribe looked at as to be the entrance to the underworld, where one communicates with the gods below, where the dead disappear into, or the souls of the children come up, and so on. And then other places, in general, especially mountaintops, are places where there is a special communication with the gods above. If you think of Moses on Sinai, for instance, and so on, because on the mountaintops you are closer, so to speak, to the upper gods. That's why Zeus lives on Mount Olympus in Greece, and all gods live on high mountains, or goddesses. And in a flat country where they have no mountains, it can also be some other special place. Now Jacob didn't know that this place was a sacred place. He concluded it from his dream. He said, "That must be a sacred place I have been, because it has come to me." That touches a mystery which we haven't yet solved. Namely, we project our soul into a landscape. If there is a whole soul geography in the world. Every nation and every civilization has a geography. They have generally a place where one communicates with the gods above, a place where one communicates with the god below, a place where there are good spirits, a place where there are evil earthly spirits, and so on. It is as if in original man, his unconscious psyche were spread all over the landscape. In certain places in the landscape, you have a shudder and you have certain experiences. The Romans still knew that. They called that the genius loci, the spirit of the place. And when, for instance, they built a house or they made a garden, then they always put a little statue or phallic symbol up to the spirit of the place. May the spirit of the place be benevolent to me. And if you, with an open heart, still go through a landscape, you will notice that there are places you feel good and you would like to stay, and there are other places you feel somehow uncanny. You don't know why, but you don't want to stay there. You have the same in a house. You see even that your house, domestic animals have favorite places where they lie and others where they won't go for anything, even if you think they are suitable. One can rationalize it and say it is because there is a cold draft or something like that, but it isn't always. Sometimes one can't find out what the reason is. They just feel psychically good in some places, and we are just the same. We have our favorite corners and we are angry if somebody else sits there where we want to sit. We are exactly like dogs. But in the landscape, the tribes have the same thing. And so Jacob hit there on a sacred place where his, now talking psychologically, his soul could open to a divine influence through a dream. And he put a stone under his head. And that stone is one again of the oldest symbols of mankind, of something sacred. In all most original tribes we still know exist on Earth, and also from all the archaic excavation and even Neanderthal man and so on probably worshipped stones. Certain stones were felt to contain some sacred powers. And for instance, for the Australian Aborigine, in certain stones the spirit of the ancestor god lives, and if a woman passes those stones, she can conceive a child. The child comes into her womb from those stones. And the same was true. The Germans, old Germans thought that. They thought that the souls of newborn children came out of tombstones on the graves of their ancestors. The ancestors were jumped into the women from there. So the stone is a place of the origin of human life. The sacred is again the eternal man. The stone is something very similar than the star. It has to do with the eternal, everlasting substance of the human being. That was projected into the stone. So with this sacred stone, which is a primitive thing under his head, a kind of fetish, which makes him capable of connecting with the beyond, Jacob goes asleep and the sun sets. The setting of the sun could be interpreted as the blotting out of consciousness. He goes deep in the unconscious, he goes asleep. And
all right. And that is all we have time for tonight here on Otherworld Connections, Revolution Radio. Thank you so much for tuning in. We will continue with, well, Marie-Louise von France and figure out, are the stones actually the stars and other stars actually stones? All right. Anyway, thanks for tuning in. Much love. Take care, everyone. Have a good night. See you.